All right, now we're going to be talking about our next group of invertebrates called Cnidarians. Notice this word starts with a C, but that C is silent, so it's pronounced Cnidarians. They're invertebrates, which means they're an animal, but they do not have a backbone or any other bones. They have tentacles, so you can see the tentacles here on the sea anemone, and they have cnidocytes. Cnidocytes are stinging cells, so all Cnidarians sting, and they use this to capture their prey. They also use it to defend themselves. So if a big fish were to come up and try to eat the sea anemone, it would sting it with its stinging cells. Most Cnidarians have radial symmetry. So that means that it looks kind of like a circle, and if you were to cut the circle in half both ways, that all these halves look about the same. They're an animal, so they reproduce sexually, but they also can reproduce asexually. Just like the sponges could make a bud and reproduce asexually, so can a hydra. This is a picture of a hydra under a microscope. Hydra are really small and they live in the water, but they can produce a little bud. So that's what this hydra is doing here now. It's producing a little bud, and that bud will fall off and be a brand new hydra. So it's just making a copy of itself. So that's asexual reproduction. Examples of Cnidarian. You have jellyfish, and there's lots of species of jellyfish. They range in size from teeny tiny ones that you can barely see to huge ones. This is coral, or one example of coral. And coral usually build up on a coral reef, so you'll have lots and lots of species living together on a coral reef. You've got the hydra, which is very small, and you need either a magnifying glass or a microscope to see the hydra. And then this is a sea anemone. Now that's clownfish. The clownfish are not Cnidarians, but they do live in a Cnidarian. And this is an example of a symbiotic relationship. Remember, symbiotic means that things live together and they help each other out. So the this is a sea anemone. The sea anemone and the clownfish live together in a symbiotic relationship. So don't get confused and think that a fish is a Cnidarian, because it is not. All right, they have two shapes. One is a polyp shape. So this is shaped like a vase, like something you would put flowers in. That's a vase. All right, this has a vase shape and it's called a polyp. Jellyfish, when they're adults, have a medusa stage, which looks kind of like an upside down cup. And this is their life cycle. They start off as a little baby larva that swims around in the water. They attach to the bottom and they make these copies of themselves. So that's an example of budding. Each one of those becomes a new jellyfish, and then it becomes an adult jellyfish. The Portuguese man of war is an example of a Cnidarian. It lives together in a colony. So it looks like it's just one animal, but that's actually lots of animals that are living together in this colony. And its tentacles are very dangerous. They can produce these long scars that burn and sting on people if they get stung. This is an example of a very large jellyfish. There's a diver, and he's swimming beside this really large bell-shaped jellyfish. There is a scene from Finding Nemo where they bounce on top of the jellyfish. Remember, the jellyfish stings Dory, so they're trying to not get caught. And what the jellyfish do is they sting with these tentacles, and then they'll pull the fish up inside their body and digest them up there. So what is this? Do you remember what we called this? They're hydra. So what are these little things called right here? Those are called a bud, and it is asexual reproduction. And there's another picture of a hydra. All right, in your notes, you need to write your summary. You also need to mark your text, so make sure that you're highlighting important facts and your vocabulary words. You also need to make sure you write your questions. And tomorrow we'll be moving on to our next group of invertebrates.